This is a review for the survival horror game Tormented Souls 2. I was lucky enough to receive a key for the game through my website survivalhorrors.com. I started the website about a year and a half ago, and the publisher for the game sent me a review key. If you'd prefer to read my written review, I will leave a link to that in the description of the video. I've been a huge fan of Tormented Souls ever since I played the first one, and I have been following the sequel very closely. The developers Dual Effect really understand survival horror. Playing Tormented Souls feels like stepping into a world where Capcom never shifted the genre with Resident Evil 4. A world where the classic survival horror style peaked with Resident Evil 0 and continued to evolve instead of giving way to action horror. It's a world where fixed camera angles, tank controls, and carefully rationed resources never went out of fashion. Instead of transitioning into years of fast-paced action horror, quick-time events, and enemies that drop resources, it's easy to look at Tormented Souls 2 and think that it's just another Resident Evil or Silent Hill clone, but that really undersells what this game does. I've played a lot of modern indie survival horror games lately. Post-Trauma, Heartworm, Hollow Body, Elisa, they're all fantastic in their own right, but Tormented Souls captures that early 2000s horror atmosphere better than any of them. It feels like a lost Resident Evil spin-off that somehow looks even better than the originals. What I love about it is that you're encouraged to slow down and search every corner of every single room for bullets and health, or key items that you might miss if you don't search everywhere. You can tell the developers put a crazy amount of time and effort into these environments. Every room looks handcrafted with little details that make you want to explore. One thing I really respect about Dual Effect is that they didn't compromise with this sequel. It should go without saying, but everything in Tormented Souls 2 remained as it was in the original. For many developers, there's a temptation to fix the biggest complaints users had with the first title. But this would probably mean removing tank controls, adding checkpoints, and giving the player an over-the-shoulder camera. I'm happy to report that Dual Effect didn't cave to this pressure, nor did they seek to cash in by appealing to a wider audience through making the game more easy or more user-friendly. They set out to deliver a true survival horror experience, and they delivered. Just like in early survival horror games, health is a resource, ammo is a resource, and saving is a resource. I can't overstate how important it is that these mechanics remain untouched. The whole time I was playing, I was thinking, should I save or wait a little bit longer? Or could I run past this enemy and save shotgun bullets for the boss? This kind of decision making simply doesn't occur with games like Dead Space. I played that recently and never found I was low on ammo. In fact, the opposite, I had over 100 bullets after about an hour's worth of playing. Dead Space is a completely different experience to Tormented Souls and early survival horror games. And I've been searching for that experience since playing the original Tormented Souls. The game is absolutely filled with puzzles, but for me, one of the hardest puzzles in the Convent was actually the first boss. When I reached the boss, I only had 2 shotgun bullets, 1 healing item and a few nails. I quickly realised that I didn't have enough resources to beat the boss, unless I used the hammer, which is actually possible, but not something I wanted to attempt. This meant I had to solve the puzzle of reaching the boss with more health and ammo. I was effectively save trapped, but I was able to use one of the earliest survival horror strategies, enemy avoidance. By loading an older save, I was able to avoid quite a lot of the enemies, and by the time I got back to the boss, I had 8 shotgun bullets and 30 nails. The boss fight was still challenging with more ammo, but it was much more manageable. Before playing Tormented Souls 2, I wasn't sure if the lighter mechanic would still be in the game, or should I say the darkness mechanic. It's another understated feature in Tormented Souls, but one with huge implications for the game's place within survival horror. When you're in a dark area, you die instantly. The only way to counter this is by using your lighter, but there's a dilemma. When you're holding your lighter, you can't use your weapons or defend yourself in any way. All you can do is run. This leads to some of the most tense encounters I've played in any horror game. There are candles scattered throughout the environment that can be lit, which give you a small island of safety to fight from. Well, at least safety from the darkness, but you're kind of trapped in this little island having to fend off the enemies. Survival horror has always been about playing as a vulnerable character who can barely defend themselves, and I can't think of another series that commits to this vulnerability quite like Tormented Souls. Taking away your ability to fight in the darkness makes the game truly unique. I would like to just take a minute to appreciate the camera work in Tormented Souls 2. This is another detail that often gets underappreciated, but it deserves recognition. Take this scene for example. The way the camera snakes through the narrow corridors and then seamlessly follows you down the elevator feels like the developers are just showing off. Achieving this sense of fluid motion and atmosphere really takes a lot of precision, and throughout the entire game the camera work is constantly excellent. I do want to mention that there are a few bugs with the game. I play exclusively with tank controls, and I noticed when I was coming in and out of menus, when I would leave a menu, my player character would be stuck until I kind of pressed a couple of buttons. This happens actually quite a decent amount of time. I actually just got used to just hammering some buttons when I left the menus. You can see it here when I switch to my crowbar. My player does a couple of little jerks, and that's because I'm trying to run forward but I'm stuck. Here's a better example where I'm trying to avoid these enemies, and each time I take health in the menus, when I come out of the menus my player's stuck and I have to run forward. I have to press the run forward button a couple of times to get unstuck. I also experienced a few crashes, usually whenever I would press stop on the record button, so I don't know if this was a hardware issue on my end or a software bug. Also, I had noticed a few cutscenes in the game. My player character would just not load, it would just kind of disappear, which can be seen in some of the footage of my playthrough. And there is also a puzzle around the 10 to 12 hour mark in the game that has glitched. There is a small workaround, but from what I hear, the publisher has assured me that these bugs will be fixed soon, so I'm hoping that means for release. Even with all of these bugs, it didn't spoil the experience for me, and I'm confident they will be fixed, but I think it's only fair that I point them out in my review. Tormented Souls is roughly a 20-hour game, so there is quite a lot here. It's said to have been 3 times larger than the original game. I have really enjoyed my playthrough, and there are actually 3 difficulties, so I'm going to play it through on the harder difficulty, and I'm actually looking forward to challenging myself on that. I'm also doing a full playthrough of the game, so I'll leave a link to that playthrough at the end of this video if you want to check that out. I'll also leave a link to my article and website. I can't recommend this game enough. It's definitely my game of the year, probably the best survival horror game of the decade.